today with Dr. Stacy Hines. Stacy is an assistant professor and an extension rangeland habitat management specialist. That's a whole big mouthful at the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service with the Department of Rangeland, Wildlife, and Fisheries Management. So, welcome to our podcast, Stacy.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's great to chat with you all today.
It's good to talk to you too. Let's just start off with what is an extension specialist? What do you do there at your work?
Yeah, sure. Well, just a real brief description of, what I do is I really help guide rangeland habitat management, as you said in my very long title. And, rangelands are really tied to a big part of what we do in Texas and, the people that we serve here. So we're a land grant university, and my position is really, well, it's an integral part of our land grant university. So our mission, we basically help extend the science to the public. And, I was really excited to be able to join AgriLife Extension. That way I can really help serve our Texas landowners and our stakeholders. I really count it as a privilege to be able to communicate that sound science to our stakeholders, just so that way they have, the best information to help guide the sustainable management of our Texas rangelands.
That's so neat. You know what? I mean, I've been familiar with extension specialists like forever, and I never really heard it put extend the science. When you said that, it was like this light bulb just went off over my head. I was like, oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah.
Now I get it.
So, Stacey, it sounds like you're engaging with the public a lot. And I also hear that you're a big advocate for citizen science. And we've heard a little bit about the Planet Marsh and Dune project. Could you tell us a little bit more about those projects you've got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So citizen science, it just really helps expand our reach and impact. So you think about, one research project, we have a few people, it's done in one location, but if you engage the citizens, get them involved in their community, give some education and training, you can really collect more data in more places. You could also complete, more restoration projects than, what we could ever do alone in, just one single research project. Another great thing about citizen science, we can actually use it to empower the next generation of scientists. And you asked me about our Planet Mars and our Planet Dunes projects, and that's exactly what we're doing with those. We started those last summer when I was still a faculty at Mississippi State. So I'm really working on these projects, continuing them here at Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. But I'm working on those with Mississippi State University, their Coastal Research and Extension Center. So we did receive funding support from the EPA, or, the Environmental Protection Agency. I think we used acronyms for everything. But what we're doing with these projects is we are working very closely with all of our coastal high school teachers and our students. And we're really developing educational training materials. So that way, these high school students, which are our next generation of scientists, they can gain those hands-on STEM career skills. So they're going to go through educational training modules to learn the importance of, marsh and dune habitats. They're going to learn how to grow and care for native marsh and dune plants. And then, to finish up the project, they're actually going to take the plants that they cared for and they're going to physically restore degraded marsh and dune habitat in their community. So unfortunately, many of our native marsh and dune habitats, they have been degraded because of human activities. With this project, instead of just focusing on, how humans have been part of the problem and causing this habitat degradation, we're trying to train our next generation of scientists to really be part of the solution. So, yep, we're human, we make mistakes, but let's learn from them and fix them. And that's really the focus of those Planet Marsh and Planet Dune projects.
That's,
We were,
oops.
yeah,
I was just going to say that's such a positive spin than, what young people are used to. It's usually gloom and doom, but this is such a proactive, things are not so great sometimes, but we can make it better.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were really excited. We've only had the project up and going for about 6 months, but last December we had our first group of 40 high school students. They restored half an acre of native marsh habitat. And so they physically planted like 200 needlegrass rust species right there in the marsh habitat. So we're still developing them right now. We're testing these projects in Mississippi, working with our target audience, making sure they're really going to meet needs of those high school teachers and those high school students, because we want to continue this project, after our funding period has ended. And because all of these native marsh and dune species that we're actually including in this program are located throughout all of the southeastern USA, our long-term goal is to really create the next generation of scientists all over the southeast USA. And through this project, we hope to restore a lot of native marsh and dune habitat.
That is really awesome. I've got a follow-up question. I just got to ask, do you have a feel for the perspective of the students, how it's shifted doing this sort of hands-on work? Because, science-based learning in the classroom is one thing. Getting out there and doing it in the real world is another. And I just wondered if you've gotten any feedback from students like, "Oh, I had no idea that this is what science could be like." And, it's could be really inspirational, I imagine, for the kids.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been able to view the pictures. So I've been doing this remotely. My students are several hours away from me, but they have been so wonderful at sending the pictures of the students that have been involved and the smiles on their faces, actually getting out there and doing the hands-on work. And research has actually shown that in learning, when you hear something, you can retain it a little bit. When you see something, you can retain it. But if you combine several different types of learning techniques, such as hearing, seeing, and doing, then the ability for that to have long-lasting impacts and effects is so much greater. So we're really hoping that this hands-on experience will really empower them. They're like, okay, yeah, I can do this, and I can see a future career in this, and this is something I can actually do.
I think that's terrific. I think everybody knows here. I'm about 100 years old, so we didn't like have these fun projects when I was in high school and stuff. But I really struggled to figure out what do I want to do. I like these things, but I didn't even realize you can make a career out of like the outdoorsy things that I enjoyed doing. I had no idea this was like you could get paid for some of this stuff. Not all of it, but you can get paid. And so I think it's terrific that you're showing these young people, yeah, that there are even it's not just fun and cool and good work, but there are career opportunities there too.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that is one of the focus is to teach them, what STEM careers are out there for them.
Yeah, it's great.
That is great. So when you're not training the next generation of scientists, you're doing your own research. So could you tell us a little bit about what you're working on as an extension specialist, um, and what specific research you've been conducting outside of the citizen science approaches?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've only been back in South Texas for a very short time, just a few months. So I haven't really started conducting any research yet, but we do have some projects planned if we receive funding. So I really thought about, what I wanted the focus of my research to be. And, to meet our extension mission, it's really going to be to, diversify our current rangeland habitat management techniques. So for example, our landowners really need a diversity of management options. So flexibility is key to success. And, that's especially true here in Texas. Our weather, as your listeners probably know, is highly variable from season to season and from year to year. So if we can diversify options for our landowners, then we can provide them with flexible management options no matter what the circumstances. So one focus of my future research is really determine, can we find new uses for some of the plant species that may be considered a pest species by our ranchers? So instead of them spending money to get rid of the plant, can it be harvested and sold for another purpose? Another focus is really to look at, we have some management techniques, but they cost a lot of money. So can we find more economical, viable management techniques? For example, we have a proposed project right now to investigate using the livestock species that our Texas ranchers actually have on their property. And can we use these livestock grazers as an alternative treatment to some of the mechanical and the chemical control that we actually have prescribed right now to decrease the abundance of some of these invasive plant species on properties? Can they be used to diversify our rangeland? Is this more economically viable than, the options that we have now? And really, what is the whole impact on the rangeland system? Because our ranchers don't manage just, one aspect of the system, but they really manage the whole system. So we also want to look at this, what is the impact to soils, to plants, to wildlife, to their livestock species? So I'm just getting started, but as you sit down in the first few months of a position, you really think about what's my long-term goal. So really my long-term goal down the road is to have, that diversity of those economically sound management options that, our landowners can engage in, sort of like a decision-making tool. You know, what's the current weather patterns right now? What plant species do I have on my property? So I know this is going to take a while. It's probably going to take the rest of my career to get here, but I'm really excited to start engaging in this research, trying to find these new uses and new techniques just to help create these patterns. That way our ranchers will have, an option no matter what's going on and what the weather is.
That's terrific. I think that's so exciting to look for different ways to use some of these pest plants because so many things that, haven't even been explored, especially in Texas. Things like creating biochar with plants and just stuff like that. I mean, there's all these just creative ideas that some people have, but it's just turning the idea into reality is going to take a lot of work. So that's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting to be in this position right now.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, you've really got a whole lot going on, and I love all of this. Our podcast is very similar to extension. I mean, the point of it, I guess, is also to extend the science, as you say. Now, one of these neat ways to help citizens with the science is through apps. And we've talked a little bit about plant ID apps, their pros and cons and things like that on the show. And I understand you're working on a plant identification app too. Is that correct? Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, I've been on the job for a few months, but I've learned that, a common question for range specialists and even a lot of our county extension agents is, what is this plant and how do I control it? So I really would like to help improve plant identification resources available because, plant identification is really the basis for any rangeland habitat management decision.
You said it.
So I have used plant identification apps in the past. They have huge databases. They're, some of them are international. And, what I have found that, in my experience, do help you get close to the identity of the plant, but you still have to do further research, at a computer or, using a plant identification book just to help you, further narrow down the species. Most of these applications, even some of our plant identification books, they really focus on, how that plant presents when it's flowering or when it's in its best growth stage. Well, down here in South Texas, we don't always have plants in their best growth stage, especially if we're going through a drought period. And, grass species especially, I have found it's very difficult to identify with these apps. So, that got my brain thinking, and it really just inspired me to look into developing a Texas Plant app. And with this, I would like to create a companion citizen science program. So that way we can go through and photograph Texas plants in all different growth stages, under different conditions, because, sometimes when a plant is grazed, it looks a little bit different than when it's not grazed. So that, maybe with these collaborative projects, we can better train that AI technology to really recognize these plants, even when they don't have their flower or seed head present. So it's, very new. I'm in the early stages. I've developed the idea for the app on paper. And so what I've been doing here lately is I've been having meetings, I've been sending out surveys, so that way I can, understand, what the interest in this app may be, what resources that we have available that maybe we could leverage. And I actually have a meeting scheduled tomorrow to kind of discuss the technical side of developing the app. So hopefully by the time this episode airs, I'll be a little closer to getting that idea for that Texas Plant app off paper and kind of starting on the development process.
Oh, that's exciting.
That
Really
is
exciting.
exciting. I'll be using that app. I'm new to Texas and I do not know any of the plants, so I desperately need this app.
Well, Lynn, I am not new to Texas, and I'll be using the app too. Seriously, I mean, just how many times have you just, what am I looking at? And it looks a little like this, and it looks a little like that, and
Mhm.
what am I looking at? So
Yeah,
that's gonna be exciting. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
we talked a little bit about career opportunities for young people as well. And I want to ask you for folks who are interested in doing something like what you're doing, do you have any advice for them, about how to get started? And, we get a lot of advice to volunteer, and I think that's terrific advice because you learn so much when you volunteer for other people and you meet people who can, further your career. But are there any like personality traits or specific skills that people need to have to really succeed and get like a jump start going?
Yeah, you're right. So volunteering is so important that I can't help but just, go ahead and plug it one more
Yeah,
time
yeah.
because I can truly say that my volunteer experience has actually helped me land a couple of jobs. But, you know, let's go deeper. So let's chat about, some of the personality traits. With Extension, our mission is to extend that science to our citizens, and it's really based on their needs. So I think the most important personality trait someone going into Extension or this type of career is to actually be a good listener. So if you want to understand what your landowners' needs are, you need to listen to them. So first we have to listen. We have to understand what are their issues, what are their management needs, and then we actually use that to help guide our research and extension programs. Um, another personality trait, I think in any research type position, you just need to be naturally curious. So anyone interested in this field absolutely needs to be a lifelong learner. And I consider myself a lifelong learner, very excited to learn new things every single day. Um, one more, think a good third trait, ecology rule of three, so let's do three traits, is you really need to be creative. So there truly is an art to science. In Extension, we do a lot of education, and I think there is an art to science and education. And it really takes that creative individual to help develop, new research experiments, to develop new extension education materials, new programs, because our stakeholders' needs, they're going to be changing. And so we have to be creative and figure out, what research we need, what new programs and education we need just to help meet the changing needs of our stakeholders.
That's such good advice. We have a term for these kind of skills that I think belittles them a little bit. We tend to call them soft skills, but soft skills, I'm okay. Okay, we can call them soft skills, I guess, but they are just, I mean, their importance can't be overstated because I mean, and think about, when you're meeting young people and they might all have the same degrees and they might all have some similar background experiences, but the ones who are good listeners and the ones who can engage and the ones who have creative ideas and all these other things that you just listened, those are the ones that are going to stand out in your mind when you're wanting to hire somebody down the road or something like that. So I think we need a better name, a better term for those skills
Right,
than
right.
soft skills,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
are so important.
And I love that you mentioned creativity. I feel like that's lost in science so often, but really encompassed in this whole citizen science idea. You have to be creative to engage a public, especially people who might not be interested in what you're looking at or what you have to say. So yeah, I really appreciate the citizen science that you do because that takes a tremendous amount of creativity and thinking outside of our normal research box. So that's really awesome. All right, we're on to the favorite question. So we have something called the biology blunder, and this is often like something funny that happens in the field or a big field mistake. I guess it doesn't have to be just in the field, does it?
No, I mean, we've had all
Chances are
sorts of
higher.
things, but I mean, yeah, once you get on in your career, you end up with all kinds of stories. So I
Yes.
always, I'm like, for the ones who don't have one, I'm like, all right, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
If you don't have one, you're just not doing it right.
Right, right. So, Stacy, do you have a biology blunder that you could share with us?
Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I love that response.
Yeah. So back during, I probably have had several, but one that I think that sticks out, that actually has a good take-home lesson that I'd like to share with your audience is kind of had to explain to my master advisor how the dog ate my homework, so to speak.
Oh,
This like one of the oldest excuses in the book of, why you didn't get something done. So just going to the story, during my master's research in North Carolina, I was actually not in range. I was in limnology, which is a study of streams. And I was investigating, some of the benefits of the actual urban stream restoration projects that had taken place a couple years prior to me starting my master's degree. So give you a little bit of context, these streams had been restored. They were located in neighborhood park and they had houses surrounding them. So one part of my research and things that we were looking into is actually, quite the expensive part of the research was we wanted to release a tracer. And by doing this, I could go into a whole bunch of nerd details. And if you want to learn about it, though, just contact me and I'll talk your ear off about them. But just in short, the tracer is actually going to allow us to determine if nutrients are being removed better in these restored streams compared to other streams in the urban environment that had not been restored. So the night before, I had meticulously measured out the very, very small amount of that very expensive tracer I needed to add to the stream. Get up the next morning, go to the study site. I get everything set up. We have a little small trolley motor, a little drip system, and it's going to take about, 4 hours to drip this tracer in and to add it to the stream. So the stream being restored, it did have those nice meanders or curves, which means that see all the way downstream. And what I didn't realize is why I was adding this. Did I mention it was a very expensive tracer?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, downstream that a homeowner was there with their dog, and they were just allowing the dog to have a wonderful time and play in the stream. So let me pause right here. Just we're like, oh, a tracer addition, nutrients. It's completely safe. It didn't actually increase the nutrient concentration in the stream. Completely safe for the dog. Didn't pose a threat to it. But the dog being a dog, I'm sure it had a great time splashing around and making the waters quite a bit turbulent. So that's completely fine unless you're trying to determine the uptake. So I had to go back and, I didn't realize that it happened until after we had finished releasing the tracer and I was actually going through the stream and trying to collect, some of the algae and the what we call biofilm at the bottom of the stream to see if they had actually removed it. And so I had to tell my master advisor that the dog potentially messed up our experiment at this site. And so we sent off a few samples to see if it did, and absolutely, yes, we confirmed that the dog did mess up the experiment at that site. So,
Had some
you know,
outlier data there.
oh yeah, we kind of had to throw out that site. So I think it's really why it's important to, repeat those experiments at
Yeah.
multiple sites. Yeah, because you never know if you're going to encounter a situation where, like the dog ate your homework situation. So,
Right.
luckily we did have a couple of backup sites, but yeah, that was pretty funny explaining at the conference. We got a giggle from the people there that yeah, this really expensive tracer at this site didn't work, but so we had to throw that study site out. So yeah.
The dog had a great time, so so win for him.
Yeah, the dog had a wonderful time that day. It made a muddy mess downstream, which I did not realize.
Oh
That's
my gosh.
crazy. Yeah, that's why we collect so many data points. Yeah, that's terrific story. I have a question for you. So
Yeah.
I met you, Stacy, as a PhD. You were a PhD student here working under Dr. Ortega on rangeland. I guess restoration, maybe call it, and or a rangeland project. How did you go from streams to rangeland?
Yeah. You know, I I'll be quite honest, I'm a first generation college student.
Mhm.
And I completed my undergrad degree, little break in between, and went back for my master's degree. And, quite honestly, like I didn't understand, being a first generation college student, nobody in my family had, completed their undergraduate degree. My sister and some cousins had started doing that. I was the first one to go to a master's degree program. And, quite honestly, like I didn't understand like looking for projects. Um, but what I think everything happens for a reason though,
Mm.
and everything works out. So I was very fortunate. The master's degree program that I started, you were accepted into the program, and then you had to find a major advisor after you were there. So I was really fortunate to find a major advisor that was doing stable isotope research, which is actually a technique and a tool that you can use across all different ecosystems. And so I was fortunate to be able to learn about that in the aquatic world, where it's been used a little bit more. And then I was actually able to take some of that experience from my master's degree and apply it to my graduate work, because we did some stable isotope research, kind of looking at cattle, deer, and nilgai interactions, and if they were eating, some of the same forages at different times of the year.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, that is neat. It's definitely one of those things like DNA or something like that, where you can, just apply to a lot of different places.
And those
Yeah.
stable isotopes, those are liquid gold as well. Very is that what you put into the stream? Because that is very expensive.
Yeah, yeah. And an itty bitty little amber vial that's just a couple inches tall back in 2006 was over $500. So I couldn't imagine what the cost of that would be now with inflation.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. That's crazy. Well, Stacy, this has been really fun to talk to you. Do you have anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
Yeah, so I am just getting started, and so I'd really love to share the web link to my webpage, so that way people can kind of keep up with all of these new things that I'm developing, creating. I've been on the job for a few months. The webpage URL, it's a bit long,
Okay.
so maybe I can add it and share it to the podcast. Your audience can navigate to it. I'm at the Corpus Christi Coastal Research, or the Corpus Christi Research and Extension Center.
Mhm.
So they can navigate to it by going to ccag.tamu.edu. They can also find it if they just do an internet search and they use the keywords Stacy Hines and rangeland. So I've got a range decisions tool on there just to help, put all the resources that AgriLife Extension has in one place. The tool is up and running, but it's new in development. I have links to some of the most popular things that I've heard about in my first few months on the job, but I'm going to be updating it monthly with new educational resources to really help guide those habitat needs. Also, once we get a little further into the development process of our Texas Plan app, we're going to put information on that, so people can get involved with that. We probably will be seeking, sponsors and donors, maybe if people want to be part of that companion citizen science project. We'll have all that information up on our webpage here real soon.
Okay, great. And just so everybody knows, Stacy is without an E, Stacy, and Hines is Hines. So if you want to Google her and rangelands, you can get there. We'll put the link in the description of our episode too for you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's Heinz spelled like the Duncan Hines dessert, not the ketchup.
Oh, that's right. It is like
Yeah.
Duncan Hines, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, the
Okay.
sweeter side.
All right. That's terrific. Well, thanks so much. Remember, everybody, don't feed the wildlife. A Talk on the Wild Side is a production of the Cesar Claiborne Wildlife Research Institute of Texas A&M University, Kingsville. Funding for this project is provided by the Harvey Weil Sportsman Conservationist Award by the Rotary Club of Corpus Christi. Podcast artwork is created by the talented Gabio Olivas, and editing is conducted by Andrew Lowry.